modders are creating a new Fallout 3, or in some ways recreating a new Fallout 3. As one of the main things we're going to be taking a look at today is this long-standing project where a developer, just a single person, is recreating Project Van Buren. And if you're not familiar with this one, you know how we had Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 in that top-down style? Well, that studio was actually making a Fallout 3 in that style, codenamed Project Van Buren, and it got canceled. But this person is now recreating that, and they have done a ton of work on this already. It's 4 years in. But even beyond that, I actually want to take a look at some Fallout 2 content that is being remade in a 3D space, and this may look familiar to some of you that have played and specifically have finished Fallout 2, and even a completely separate and additional remake of Van Buren. There's a lot to talk about in this one. So starting things off, let's take a look at the isometric Project Van Buren. Since 2017, a single dedicated modder, really just a developer in this case, has been diligently working on recreating Fallout 3, that being the original Fallout 3. This project is being made by Adam Lacko in Unity, and a ton of progress has been done already with a bunch of this information and images being shared on his Twitter account. One of the notable things about Van Buren and why the community is so aware of it is it actually had a decent amount of work complete on it before the developer had to lay everyone off, and of course the project was cancelled, and then of course several years later the rights to Fallout sold to Bethesda. And in the years since this was originally worked on, some of that content has actually leaked. We've gotten a tech demo of the game itself, but then even further, a several 100-page large design document, because the game did go through a quite extensive and detailed pre-production phase, where a ton of the lore as well as in-game mechanics were established. So now this project is actually looking at that leaked tech demo as well as that design document and trying to be quite faithful to what was intended there and recreating it, or with some of this content, literally creating it for the first time. Naturally, that top-down or isometric perspective is returning, which isn't going to be for everyone, but more on that in a moment. And it was designed with this theme in mind, a retrofuturism meets Mad Max style. This was established with what we saw already from Van Buren, and I think it's actually quite well represented here. And although this is a project trying to recreate a game that was being made in 2003, it also has a ton of modernizations. There's dynamic lighting, AI enhanced textures, among many other things. At this point in development, the project has actually implemented every major technical feature as of a couple of weeks ago. So from some of these gameplay demos, you could see things like dynamic fog of war, or even your Pip-Boy auto updating based off what you're exploring. One of the more distinct design choices that was planned for the original Fallout 3 was actually real-time combat with pausing, not turn-based combat. This also has been implemented, so enemies will continue firing at you and you against them. You'll just have the option to pause the game and then make some decisions or switch targets, very similar to what is there in the modern Fallout games with VATS. Several of those very familiar Fallout creatures have been re-added. I like these because they almost have a familiar design, but they definitely do seem to have some inspirations from some of the more modern Fallouts, the Bethesda Fallouts. Basic things like the UI are implemented. You see the map side UI, but then also when you're in the inventory and organizing things or selecting things. And one of the really cool aspects of this is several of the locations have already been recreated. Van Buren was set to take place in part of Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, and Utah. So a little bit all over the place. And we get images from all over. New Canaan in particular looks really good. I feel like this is truly showcasing some of those modern visual upgrades that will be coming with this. It doesn't really look like how those old Fallout games looked. And one of the most iconic locations in all of Fallout, you get a look at Maxon's bunker, both on the exterior side and even some shots of the interior. And even just an updated render of the main screen graphic. For some of you, this is going to be pretty wild to see for the first time. It was for me. I've looked at the Van Buren stuff quite a few times. This, of course, leaked at some point, and now to actually see it modernized and look way better as it was recreated by this author is really cool. And as I mentioned before, all of this is being posted on his Twitter. There's a ton more out there that I'm not explicitly covering here, just kind of giving you a rough overview. I'll link to his Twitter down below if you want to follow this project more closely or just stay up to date with it. And you can clearly see a ton has been done already, and this is all just from one person. Definitely a bit different when it comes to a Fallout 3 remake, a huge twist on what that actually means, but it'll be pretty amazing if this eventually gets to see the light of day. And at points, the mod author here has even been in contact with some of the old devs of Van Buren. Although alternatively, I know a lot of you aren't necessarily a huge fan of that isometric style, so we also do have Fallout Revelation Blue. I covered this one a bit in the past, but basically what this is doing is actually making it so Van Buren is in New Vegas' engine, a 3D take on what was otherwise an isometric Fallout. It kind of has that same mentality based off some of those leaked details, the design document overall, trying to recreate and re-implement that game, but this time in New Vegas. They have a short trailer showcasing what they've done thus far, as well as some more updates on their Discord. This one's definitely way earlier on, doesn't have quite as much to show for it, but I figure I'd just mention it again here at this one quickly because I imagine a lot of people will be curious to see how each of these progress and advance over time, if you're excited for Van Buren or at all familiar with it. But then we could also switch over to the Fallout 2 side, which is interesting in its own right, as Bethesda actually is kind of recreating a power armor from Fallout 2, that with Frank Horrigan's power armor. So basically this was data mined from Fallout 76. These images are people taking that data mined armor or taking the files of the armor and actually porting it to Fallout 4. That's not something you could technically legally do, so that's why we have screenshots and not actually file download links. It's not to say it's not out there though, or you can't find it for yourself. And technically this is going to end up just being a skin in Fallout 76, nothing crazy. You'll have to purchase it with atoms most likely, but since the Fallout community is amazing and insane, one mod author has actually taken to just recreating this in Fallout 4. And we can see here the Equalizer power armor as it is dubbed in Fallout 4 being worked on. So we might literally have a situation where Bethesda recreated one of the famous armors from Fallout 2. If you don't know, Frank Horrigan is the final boss in that game. That was data mined from Fallout 76. Then a modder for Fallout 4 was like, hey, that looks really cool. It's a great idea. I'm just going to remake it as a free mod for Fallout 4. In a way, it's really just a beautiful aspect of the Fallout modding scene, and it looks absolutely amazing. Which, speaking of, there's also this really cool looking Enclave power armor that's a microtransaction in Fallout 76. Never mind, 43 is remaking that for free for Fallout 4 also. But then the topic of Fallout 2, let's also take a look at the Combined Arms expansion pack. Combined Arms right now is one of the best weapon mods to ever release for Fallout 4, and it's getting a free expansion update, adding in several additional weapons. One of which, as you could probably tell by these images, is the P90. The P90 also happened to appear in Fallout 2. So kind of making this an even more lore-friendly weapon pack, even though it's not really super lore-friendly at all. But at the same time, this looks awesome. One of the really cool parts about Combined Arms, and what sets it apart from a lot of other weapon packs out there, even though there aren't many, is the vast amount of customization options it has, even though it's already adding in a ton of different weapons. So as you can see from these background screenshots, it's not just a P90 with a few barrels and 2 scopes. You actually do have some more fundamental customization options. There's quite a bit you can do to customize this, or really just turn it into something else, which is one of the best aspects of Fallout 4's weapon customization system. And at the end of the day, it's making a mod that many of you probably already use and love just even a bit better, implementing even more free content into Fallout 4. So yeah, that's a look at some remakes, some recreated things going on, some content from the original Fallout 3 with Van Buren, then also some content from Fallout 2, which is technically also coming to Fallout 76 if you want to pay money for it and hate downloading free mods. As always, again, I thank you guys all for watching this one. I hope you found it informative, but until next time, I hope to see you all later.